Welcome to Alberta Conservation Association's Harvest Your Own podcast, the resource for everything hunting, navigating through the field, the butcher shop, and the kitchen. Life is all about great food. Let's get started.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Brad Fenson, an avid outdoor enthusiast who has worked as a freelance journalist, photographer, and public speaker for over 3 decades. I have hunted, fished, and foraged all my life and hope to share my passion for the outdoors. Along the way, I want to encourage everyone to harvest wild proteins and enjoy the satisfaction of providing the next meal for your family. Our goal is to educate, entertain, and inspire individuals to get outdoors and create a connection between food, health, and your future meals. Welcome to Harvest Your Own. Today I've got an old friend of mine. Well, he's not that old, but we've been hunting together for a long time. And the best way to describe him is as a waterfowl fanatic. Like if you were to look up the word fanatic and add waterfowl to it, his picture would be in the dictionary. Mario Friendy, he's does the sales and research and marketing and research and development, product development, all that stuff with Final Approach. He's worked in the waterfowl sector for many years, and most likely because it's his true passion in life. Welcome to the show, Mario.
Hey, thanks for having me. You know, I'm always excited if we're going to chit-chat about chasing birds. I'm in.
Yeah. Well, when they said, I was asked to put together a podcast on calling geese, I was like, that one's pretty easy. I know who I'm going to go to.
You know, if you weren't born like a great caller and you had to learn, most people have to just learn. And some it takes a longer time. It took a long time for me to like, for the light to come on goose calling. So I think it's easier for me to like explain it or teach it because I didn't have a lot of people around me to help me call. So it was, I think I can understand it a little better and teach it a little better because I had to go the hard road, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of us started. And that's why we're going to try to do this. And I think we have an advantage by trying to describe it rather than having video and people trying to emulate what you're doing. So the description and the words are very important, but we've had some great times together over the years. Calling is very effective for bringing birds in, finishing them, getting them within range, allowing hunters to make clean, efficient shots and kills where there's no cripples, no chasing birds. Calling can really add to the experience. It can be just as rewarding as making a good shot when you call in a bird and do it correctly. So, it shouldn't be overlooked as a tool when we're out there. It is something that enhances the experience, increases our success rate, and gives us something else to appreciate.
There's no doubt. And we've seen it, like you said, we've seen the difference calling makes on certain days. You know, listen, some days you're fortunate enough to be in the spot they want to be and they just keep coming, and it doesn't matter what you do, or you could even screw it up and they're still coming, but it's the days that, when it's tough and the calling is the difference, that's when you got to pull it through for sure.
Yeah. I'll just share a couple experiences. I remember putting on the waders with you one time and we were out shooting ducks on a local wetland, and a pair of honkers flew by the far end, and you got on the call and just started sweet talking them, is the best way to put it. And they flew over and we shot the pair of them. And it was a great experience until you discovered just how organic the wetland bottoms are in Alberta.
I did experience the wonderful organic bottom of a wetland. Yes.
Yeah. Pull the boots right off your feet.
I've told people many times, I will not bring my waders up there. And I hope that wherever we are, the pair doesn't fit me.
Yes. Yeah. Another experience I'll share just to sort of talk about the importance of calling. We were out on a spring or a fall snow goose hunt and had the electronic callers going, and there was some singles and doubles that would come by and look from high up. You grabbed a snow goose call and started to talk to them one-on-one. And every single time those birds swung around, cupped their wings and finished as though it was one of their long lost buddies that they, knew their voice, knew exactly what they were saying, and they came in. So, a lot of times we think we already have the advantage, know everything, but we can really take things to the next level in terms of success and rewards.
I remember that because it was like, hey, let's try the collar lower or this or that. And then you said, why don't you just try it and see what happens? And I'm not next single or double or whatever. I'm going to turn the collar off and just go ahead. And it was just a couple notes. It was like, and then they call back and then they just come. So, I mean, that we totally watched that make a huge difference and finish, however many, singles or pairs or 3-packs. Like it just was like automatic then. So for sure.
Yeah.
That's like research development.
It sure is. It tells you how vocal those birds are in terms of their communication skills. I've often said the worst thing you can do when you're snow goose hunting is not call, because it's so foreign to them. They're so chatty. They talk so much. They're so vocal that the calling, especially for certain Arctic geese, is crucial to your success.
I agree. Like it's automatic. Like you have to have that part of your arsenal like dialed in as best you can. Like listen, if you're not a good caller, learn from a good caller. Like we'll get into all that stuff, but it's like, if you have your basic sounds down, like that's going to help. Plus reading the birds, like, well, I'm sure we'll talk about that too.
Yeah. Just being able to speak their language is so critical. I remember one morning we were out with buddies here in Alberta, and early morning, lots of specks coming, and we used our spec calls. And being able to talk to specks when they're in smaller groups or family groups or even mid-sized flocks was crucial. And we had a limit of specks on the ground as the sun started to break over the horizon. So, legal light is half an hour before sunrise. And as that sun was peeking up, we were already done. And I strongly believe it's because we were talking spec.
Specs are very, as you know, they're much more social and talkative and in tune. I would probably say the specs are more in tune than any other goose, because they're very specific sounds and specific times, and they 100% answer you immediately, or are waiting. So I would say they're probably the most in tune with communication back and forth.
I agree. And they're also the ones that have the notes that are the closest between they're talking to each other, like, hey, come in for breakfast, and an alarm. So you really have to know what you're saying as well. So, I think to get started, let's talk about what people need to do to start. Let's talk about breathing and how you actually blow a call and the different tones, whether you use back pressure, where you put your hands, the mechanics of it. Tell us how to get started, and to keep it simple, let's talk about a honker call.
It's all in your breathing to start with most of the calls, if not all. And it's going to be hot air blowing out. It's going to be like you are fogging a mirror versus cooling down soup or coffee, right? Where you're blowing cold air. Like it's coming from your diaphragm. So it's from your diaphragm. So it's you know what I mean? It is a hot air. If I was like on a honker call, if I was blowing, the other end, that's what it sounds like. I'm blowing through the other end of the call, and it's hot air. And you can, to start achieving sounds on a goose call, you could use different words, or I don't want to call them words, because like ga, like GA, or da, DA, not really a word, but more of a sound.
It changes the tone. It changes the tone of the call.
Yeah, to get the control. Right. And you talked about like your hands, because your hands, so if you just blow a call, you don't get any back pressure. Your back pressure will come from your, offhand, let's call it, which is like not holding the call. Your on hand is holding the call. Your off hand is at the barrel or the exhaust or where the air is coming out of the call. That's where you're going to get your back pressure. So you got to get your hands right. So you just have enough back pressure to get a sound, but not to totally close it down. And what that back pressure hand does, or your off hand, is going to give you that deeper sound. But then if you open it up, it's going to give you a higher pitch sound. So that's going to control kind of your pitch and what the actual call sounds like. So hand placement is super important. And, listen, there's so many, and we talk about this all the time, Brett, there's so many videos and stuff out there to look up and find. I would just say, find, and listen, I'm not saying there's good and bad on the internet. Everybody knows that. So I would say find somebody who is an incredible goose caller. You could go back and find Tim Grounds's, videos, find Tim Grounds, find Sean Stahl, find Fred Zink, find Scott Trinan. Look for these guys that are accomplished callers, and you'll find, on the goose side, what to do, where to put your hands. And I would say watch a couple of them, because they all do something different as well. And you might get something different from, something might work for you, and something different might work for somebody else. So it's a lot of preference, and there's a lot out there.
Let's try to keep it simple. Breathing is really important. Blow like you're fogging a mirror, put the hand pressure there. Yep. And when you start, don't try to string out a sentence of goose talk. Just cluck.
No.
Is that once you
Correct.
can master the cluck, you can move on to a double cluck or other noises, and you don't need to do anything else to be successful. You'll find that even being able to make the basic sounds is going to make a difference. So just give us a cluck with, the right breathing, a little bit of hand pressure, and what's it sound like?
Yeah. So the first sound I would tell everybody to learn is just it's like a musical instrument. So you want to be in control of your instrument, let's say. So like when I was talking about like a GA, like a ga sound or a da sound, it is a very long note, and everything comes off of this note. This is where your goose sound comes from. And you need to control the reed, and that's when you control the call. So if you blow through like this, and this is like a ga or a da, that's your control of the reed. And everything, like you said, like that cluck is going to come off that, because if I do a cluck really slow, it's going to be that sound, and then I cut it off. And that's where I cut it off. So that's a super slow cluck. But when I'm just doing it after I get faster and better, that's when that cluck comes in, and then you can get faster as you go. But just like you said, don't go too fast at the start. If you can get control of the reed, then you'll be in control of the call. Because if you can hold your air there and hold that note really long, you're building up your air pressure and you're getting control of the call. And honestly, that's probably the most important, is to control it.
This podcast is produced for Harvest Your Own, a program dedicated to those who want to reconnect with food and health through their experiences outdoors. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a resource for individuals to learn more about hunting and the outdoors. There's information to get you started and ensure that your compass stays pointed in the right direction to be successful. Where's your next meal coming from?
So don't go overboard. Learn how to cluck,
Right.
which will lead into the next sounds. And then the best advice I can give anybody, whether you're calling ducks, geese, or anything, is go spend some time at the marsh and listen to the birds. They are the best teachers out there. You're going to find there's all kinds of different sounds and notes, and that a lot of birds Well, most birds don't sound the same. They have different tones. It's just like people. Our voices are different. Birds are different. And when you actually stop to listen and pay attention to what they're saying, you go, wow, yeah, well, I can do that. And you go home and you learn that cluck, and you can learn to double cluck, and you can learn to put strings together to sound like the birds you've heard outdoors.
Well, and you're going to hear them, like you said, if you go to the marsh, like you go in, you sit down, everybody's relaxed and they're just calling relaxed versus like if you first get there and you spook a bunch of birds, you're going to hear different sounds than when they're calm. So that's the other thing. You want to sound calm. You want to sound like, hey, this is the place to be. You don't want to sound too, tense. And you can hear that kind of stuff. Like you can hear somebody, we've always joked that somebody who's, calling ducks and they sound like a 400-pound mallard that's really mad and they're just like, and you could hear that, right?
You can.
So you want to be in control. You want to be calm. You want to sound like this is the place to be and fun and exciting. You don't want to be too stressed because they 100% can pick up the stress and all that. I know that sounds crazy, but they can't. Like they are 100% on vocalizations on the actual sound and the tone. So that's what they're picking up on. So you have to be not only the right sounds, the right tone, your pitch, like you got to have everything, dialed in on your part and not, when you walk into a marsh and you kick a mallard hen out, you hear what she sounds like.
She's alarmed.
She sounds stressed and she can't get out of there fast enough, and she's telling everybody else to get out of there.
Right.
Sounds totally different when they're having a good time.
Yeah, and it's really important. I know I catch myself all the time, and actually you've reminded me that a lot of times when I get excited, I blow the call like a duck that's had way too much caffeine, and I shorten the notes, I string them together too fast, and I sound, the birds would notice the difference.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I will tell everybody too, on any of the calls, you're going to pick up or try or do whatever, do yourself a favor and do some research, whether it's a goose call or a duck call or whatever it is. Find an inexpensive, $30 to $40 call, something under $50. Polycarbonate is easy. That's going to be the most inexpensive. Find a good call that's less expensive that you can make all the notes on. That is going to help you. Don't go buy a $200 call that's acrylic that is, like supercharged and because somebody said this is the best call ever. Well, if they've been blowing for a while and they know how to call, like, yeah, sure, that's easy. But start on an inexpensive call so then you can get all the sounds, because you don't want to get, you don't want to buy a call and get just totally, you're just down in the dumps because you can't blow it. And then you just stick it in the drawer and that you just wasted $200. Like, I don't want you to do that. So I want you to buy something that is a decent call that you get the sounds out of. And then as you get better, then you can start picking what you want and all these, high powered calls and everything else. That's key in the start of the whole thing.
Yeah. The progression to those more expensive calls, and we'll call them high performance calls, is knowing what you're doing in the first place in order to use that call properly and get your money's worth out of it. But for anyone beginning or starting out, that's, the best way to put it is it's way too much call for you.
Listen, on the duck side, as far as I worked for Buck Gardner when I started. Then I went to work for Fred Zink, and probably if I were to look at, outside looking in, I learned from probably the best duck caller in the industry, which was Buck. And I learned more goose stuff from probably one of the best goose callers, which was Fred Zink, on that side. And both of them were very key in people learning to blow a duck call or a goose call. And they always had like, hey, here's our best, Buck had, here's our best duck call and an instructional like DVD or CD at the time. And then Fred would have the same thing on the Goose side. So those two name brands, have always been, key in instruction and getting people started. So, there's been, listen, everybody has something like that, but I'm just pointing out what I've learned and what I've learned off of and what was easy too. And watching people as I worked at both companies, all of a sudden, you're sitting with some kid who's 12 and he gets like the first Goose sound and he's all excited like that. That's a big deal. So like I said, buying the right call to start and having instruction is key for sure.
What else would you look for? You get in there and there's double reads and long calls and short calls and all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
Why are there different call sizes, shapes, sounds, reads, and what should we look for a beginner call?
On a beginner duck call, I would 100% find a double read. And the reason why is it's easier to get a duck sound out of it. A single read duck call takes more control of the read because there's only one. A double read is more forgiving and more easy to blow because there's two reads, and it's going to give you a better hunting sound, a better duck sound, easier than the single read. So I would focus on a double read duck call. And then on a Goose call, I would focus on a short read Goose call. The longer the Goose call, and I don't mean like a flute, I mean just a longer Goose call is going to be a little easier sounding and easier to get that honker sound out of it versus a real short one. So, look for a mid-size to longer short read call. And like I said, there's a ton of brands and look around, but instruction is the key and there's a lot of it online. But that's where I would start on those and don't progress and don't think it's going to go super fast. Don't like, I'm just rushing to the call and I'm just going to start blowing every note. Like there is a progression on getting the sound because this sound will lead into that sound and then the next sound. So take your time. Obviously don't start like September 1, right? Yeah. Like start now in the summertime, right? When you got nothing to do and you're bored and you're going, God, is the season going to get here? Well, this is a great time to sharpen your calling skills.
Yeah, you can drive the family crazy at home. So make sure you go down into the basement, or if you want to drive the neighbors crazy, go outside. Put on some hearing protection because you can get pretty loud, and it actually has pretty high decibel levels. And just
it does.
Keep working at it, and all of a sudden it'll hit you. You'll be struggling a little bit, and all of a sudden that note will turn over, and you'll go, "That's it." And then it's easy to progress and move on to the next call. So, I think we've covered honkers well, and they're probably one of the easier birds to talk to. They're pretty forgiving. They are very social. They're very vocal. So calling does work. I know that lots of Albertans, I've hunted with them over the years, and they're like, you don't really have to call honkers. That might be the case early season when they're coming out in family units and there's chatter within the incoming flock. Not so much on the ground, but as the season progresses, they get more excited. Birds on the ground, talk to the birds coming. There's excitement. There's lots of talk back and forth. So, early season, you can get away with less calling. And as the season progresses and the birds get more tuned in to watching for hunters, they're more tuned in socially with each other. That's where the chatter really becomes important.
This podcast was made possible by Alberta Conservation Association and the Harvest Your Own community. If you're interested in harvesting your own food, there's a comprehensive collection of information to gain insight and knowledge. Head to the field, harvest your own protein, prepare it, and taste the results. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a library of information from getting started and geared up to processing, butchering, and cooking wild game to make the connection between health and food.
Let's take a turn and let's go to the specs. You need a specific spec call. I've had some people say, well, I can make those notes on the Canada call. I don't think you can get the same tone. They're a very high-pitched call. it's 2 notes, is it not? Give us just a little rundown on a spec call and how to use it and the sounds we'd make.
It is a very different tuned call, okay? And it is a very high pitch. If I was to go in pitch, it would go spec, snow, honker, from high pitch to low pitch.
Yep.
And it is extremely high pitch. It's different sounds. And your back pressure on a spec call, there's really not that much there. You know, what I say into the call is like he, ha, ha, like, and that, and on the other end of the call, it's like this, because it is a little less back pressure because of the high pitch. So you want that high pitch to scream. So you don't want to block down the notes with your offhand, like we talked about on the honker call, because that's what you want to get your sound out of. And once we get done, I could do some sound files so everybody can hear everything, and we'll do some, we'll put some up so they have them, or it's at the end so everybody can listen. Right. So I don't blow everybody out right now. So we can do that. And that's going to help you. But the spec call is not, and you don't blow it like a honker call as much. It is a different, I don't want to say your air's different, but it comes out faster, and it's like bursts versus like drawing out like a long honker, cluck, or a moan. You know what I mean? It's quick, fast. It's almost like a versus a of a honker call. So it is a quick burst, and it's high pitched. Like the call's already pitched high,
and it's all done through air control.
And you just have to get, like, once you hear that spec tone, most of them are tuned for it, so you don't have to blow as much or have as much control as you would a honker call because of the sounds. Now, obviously, like the really incredible spec callers have all these sounds and can control it like a musical instrument, like I've never seen. You've met Steve down in California, Hawkinson, who's got cupped up. Like, Steve is one of the best spec callers I've probably been around. He knows what to do when. His sounds are incredible, and he makes sounds that, like, he's on another level. Like, he makes sounds that, like, I can't do them. But he also hunts them, every day versus me up here where I see him once in a while, or when I come up to see you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he is in California and they see specs constantly.
Yeah.
For calling, he's an incredible caller.
He is. For calling, we use the he, ha, ha, and it's all air control in terms of how hard you're pushing it out. But specs talk like they peep a lot too. And that's what you're talking about is once you learn the language, there's all kinds of different notes and things that they're saying back and forth to each other. But, in a field situation or on the marsh where you're trying to get their attention and get them to come over and have a look, or to try to get them to focus on coming to join the flock to feed, it's he, ha, ha. And what you were doing is turning your call around and blowing into the exhaust port to practice your airflow. Yes, so that those sounds you were making were through the back. So to start practicing, you do it through the exhaust port. Listen to your change in volume of air going through the call. Then you turn it around and blow into the reed end where you can actually make a sound.
And here's the thing. You know this as well as I do. And this comes from you hunting all the animals and everything you chase. Like, everything has certain sounds at certain times, and you have to pay attention. You know what I mean? And like you said, if you go to the marsh or while you're hunting specs or whatever, and you hear a note, when did that note happen? And try to do that note when you hear it, and you got to experiment, and maybe that note or that sound is going to be the difference on a good hunt versus a great hunt. So you got to be really aware of your surroundings and everything that's going on, and listen and take it all in. That's a huge part of it.
Yeah. The only thing I could think about when you were saying that is the specks when they go beep, 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 when they're alarmed and they're all back flaring out of your decoys because they saw something.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, you hear that, and then they get real high pitched and you're like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Probably
For sure.
the hardest one to listen to and differentiate the sounds is snow geese. They've got feeding calls, murmurs, shouting back and forth. I won't even say it talking or calling back and forth. It's like they shout like, mack, mack.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah, they bark at each other.
And here's the thing. You also have, on specs, you can hear like a real old adult that's real raspy, right? And then you can hear like a young spec that isn't as raspy and just high pitched, right? On the honkers, you really can't tell. Okay. Like some will sound different. I don't know if that's an age thing or just a sound thing. That I don't know. On the snows, you could definitely hear the juveniles versus the adults. The adults will be that deep sound. You'll hear that young, high pitched sound. It's like they're not developed yet, and you gotta know both. But you want to concentrate on the adult sounds just because the juveniles will come to that sound. And it is, I don't think you can blow a snow call wrong.
Yeah.
If there's a lot going on, because as you know, there's always a lot of noise unless you're getting those singles and doubles. And if you're getting like a single or a double, like you just need to okay, you got to calm down, and then you just got to go. It's more like a scream, like you said. It's like a rah, right? And rah, and then they'll go rah, and then rah, rah, and then it's back and forth, and it's real slow and real technical, and you don't have to get so crazy on a snow call. Now, obviously, when there's a lot of snows and a lot of people, I would just tell everybody to blow calls and make a lot of noise. Now, listen, there are some times, and I've said it, I don't know, a lot. Like there's a ton of snows coming, or there's a ton of specks, or like there's so many birds in the air and they're so loud, and you're like, listen, you don't have to call at that time.
No.
Because if they can hear you, I would really be surprised, because they're in the air, they're flapping wings, and everybody else is making noise. I'm pretty sure they don't hear us on the ground.
One of the first really successful snow goose hunts I went on, the fellow that organized the hunt had a shoebox full of old goose calls. There were honker calls in there, snow calls, everything. And he walked down the line of shooters. There was about 6 of us or 7 of us. And he'd made everyone take a call. And lots of guys are going, I don't know how to call. I don't want this thing. And he said, I don't care if you know how to call. Just make noise. And I was amazed. That's when it hit me. Like, snow geese are social. They're going to have lots of chatter, feeding chuckles, murmurs. There's so many different noises that you hear that when you make a bunch of noise, it's exciting for the birds. So don't worry too much about talking the specifics, but make some goose noise when you're out there. Don't be silent. That's the biggest mistake you can make.
Agreed. They're very social, because even in the spring when we're running the e-collars, right? When we're running the electronics, I'll just touch on this really quick. Like even on the electronic call, we're turning up the volume and down the volume when the birds are coming or circling, because, if you listen to a big grind on the ground of snow geese, it's like they get really loud and then they get quiet and then it's loud again. Like it's just constant noise of volume up and down. And it's just, there's so much going on. So yeah, I think on the snows, you can get away with a lot more on the snows for sure, so, and I would be totally with everybody making noise, even if you're just chipping, like on a honker call, like you could just easily just go anything just to make some sounds. And if everybody's making noise, like you said, they're very social, they're very loud, and they're just looking for the noisiest, bunch of birds, and they're just going to come take a look. So I think you can get away with way more on that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Build confidence.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Well,
and you can, and here's the thing on the electronic calls and all the sounds, those are taken off of live birds and everything. So you can listen to those sounds. If you have one, like you could learn right from that sitting in your garage or outside with the caller, you know what I mean? Because those are real sounds. So that's a great, learning tool as well.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to call with a mouth call, even though you've got an e-caller running, because it does help.
Oh.
Those singles, doubles, and small groups, it finishes them very nice.
We were in California last year, and we'll probably we'll have that episode out this year because we filmed it late. It was late January. We were down in California with Steve and David, and their buddy is a mouth caller for snows, right? And I've seen guys mouth call, and I was like, yeah, I think it works. But I watched him call singles in mouth calling, and they ate it up. And they literally like hovered and came in feet down, like right in the decoys, 20 yards, kill them right in front. Just, it was pretty awesome. So, I'm excited to see that because I was sitting, two guys away from him and watching them, and I'm like watching him, watching the bird, watching him, watch the bird, and they just a couple times those birds just ate it up. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I'm excited for this fall. I think we've given a tremendous amount of information here for people to get started. We tried to make it digestible because you can overdo it real quick, but people want to see Mario and what he does. You've got a show out.
Yep, we're on YouTube. If you just go to Final Approach, you'll find The Last Pass. You can find it there. We are also on Wild TV. You can go there and check it. It's called Final Approach. It's called The Last Pass. And this will be the first year that we'll be on Canadian Tire on the online store with all the Final Approach stuff. We have fabrand.ca in Canada to go find stuff because Canada's such a vital market for us. And I miss being, included up there and seeing our products. So we're pushing really hard for the Canadian market because we just miss everybody up there and we want everybody back. So we're working at it. We're getting there.
Absolutely. It's all about fun and spending time with family and friends in the outdoors. And waterfowl hunting is a very social activity. It's not like deer hunting where you have to be quiet or you spend 20 days alone stalking one buck. But, lots of rewards. Take it to the next level. Get a call. Learn how to use it and enjoy the rewards. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us today, Mario. We really appreciate it.
Buddy, I appreciate it all the time. Can't wait to come up and see it.
We hope to inspire people to reconnect with nature and appreciate where your food comes from by harvesting your own. For more information on getting started or to learn specifics about the Field to Fork experience, visit harvestyourown.ca and follow on Facebook and Instagram. Check back often for new material, recipes, and videos that are posted regularly. Please subscribe to Harvest Your Own podcast and take the time to rate and review the show to help us build a dedicated core of passionate hunters as our regular audience. Until next time, embrace the outdoors and all it has to offer. Thanks for joining us.